Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and today we're doing a radio replacement on this BMW 3 Series. In this install, we're going to show you how to remove the factory radio, head over to the bench, wire up a new radio with a wiring harness and dash it, and get everything reinstalled in the factory location. Let's get started. Now what's special about this install is this BMW does have factory audio steering wheel controls that we're going to retain in this install. So we're going to show you what parts you're going to need to make that happen. So the first thing that we need to do is actually get the factory radio out, and there are screws holding it in. It's behind this bezel. So we have a trim panel here that allows us to unclip the bezel up and around the radio without damaging the dash. So what we're going to do, well, the other side just already popped on out. Just carefully work this on loose. Okay, just like so. Put that up here so you don't damage or scratch it. Now, once that's been removed, we have two Phillips on both sides. What we're going to do is use a driver and pull those out. Okay, so once those two screws are removed, you can go ahead and jiggle this on free. Now, before you disconnect anything, it's a good idea to make sure you don't have any discs left in the disc slot. So once the radio has been pulled out, go ahead and disconnect your harnesses, like your antenna and your main harness here. You may or may not have antenna for satellite radio, depends on your model. And finally, your main harness. Now to pull out your main harness here, there's actually a little picture on it, but we'll use the same panel tool. Get up underneath and slide up the lock and unplug our harness. Now, once that's all been unplugged, at this point, we can set the radio off to the side, and we're going to head over to the bench and begin wiring up the new radio. This video is sponsored by Crux Interfacing Solutions, an excellent location for radio replacements, camera interfaces, and more. Check out cruxinterfacing.com to start planning your next install today. Okay, so here at the bench, the parts that we're going to need for the install, first and foremost, the radio we've chosen to go with is this Pioneer DEH-X 6810BT, just a good CD, Bluetooth, USB aux type radio. This radio comes with its own wiring harness, and it also comes with a DIN can or a stereo sleeve or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to need that for our install today. So when you go ahead, choose your radio, ensure that you have a sleeve that comes with the radio. Now to accommodate that in the dash, we have a double DIN. Now to accommodate this in the dash, we have a single DIN dash kit. Essentially it is just like a bezel piece. The radio itself doesn't clip into it, it's just more of a trim piece. It's the Metra 99-9300 for select BMW vehicles. We need an antenna adapter. We're going with the Metra 40-VW12. And then the wiring harness adapter, since we have steering wheel controls that we're going to retain, the kit that we're going to go with is this Crux SWR-BM-57K. It comes with the pre-programmed steering wheel control module and two versions of the harness. Now, depending on which Series 3 you have, which model year, it'll depend on which harness you choose to go with. Now, looking at our factory radio here, we have this harness style, which matches up with this harness style. So we're going to be using this one. This one we're going to set off to the side maybe for another install. We don't need this today. First thing that we need to do is we're going to take our aftermarket wiring harness that came with the radio and the adapter that came with our Crux kit, and we're going to prep it by stripping both ends here and begin soldering up color for color. We're going to solder those connections and cover them with heat shrink just to protect it, and then we'll test to tape the harness here at the end for a professional look that also protects the wiring. Let's get started. Okay, so at this point we went ahead and stripped both harnesses here, so it's just bare wire, and we put heat shrink on this side so when we're done soldering we can move it up and over our connections. Now at this point, like I said, the majority of this wiring is just matching color for color. We're going to twist them together and we're going to solder them. Okay, so we finished our wiring harness. We matched all the colors, color for color. For us in this install today, everything actually matched really nicely here. Again, we have our heat shrink that what we'll do as soon as these connections cool is move this up and over those connections, and we'll shrink it down with the heat gun here. The solid blue wire on our BMW side is our amplifier turn on, so if you have the factory amplifier or not, you need to hook that up to the radio's amplifier trigger wire, which we've done. And we've also left off a little pigtail that we've teed off just in case we add an aftermarket amplifier down the road. We have that there and available. So again, like I said, at this point we're going to move our heat shrink up and over our connections and use a heat gun and shrink the tubes. Wiring harness is all good to go here. We got everything taped up. This end goes to the WR input on the back of the radio because we're doing a Pioneer, so that plugs right on in. The Kenwood side, since we're not doing a Kenwood, I just capped that off. This end plugs into the BMW side. We have an amplifier turn-on wire ready to go for an aftermarket amplifier. This end plugs into the Pioneer, and we got our dip switch all configured. So really for a dip switch configuration, number 1 and 2 are off, 3 and 4 are on because we're doing a Pioneer, and then 5 through 8 are all off since the BMW. So that is it. It's all pre-programmed, ready to go. Next thing we need to do is focus on the radio. Now with our radio itself, we have to pull the can off from around the radio and install the can in the car before we pop the radio in. So let's go ahead and remove it. Finally here, if your radio comes with a Bluetooth mic, go ahead and run that to your desired location in the car. Okay, so at this point we are done with our radio prep. Let's head over to the car, get our can installed. We will get our dash bezel all installed up and around the radio as well, and plug in our wiring harness adapter. Okay, so we're back here in the car. What we need to do at this point is get our metal can installed into the factory dash area. So what we're going to do is start feeding our wires through and getting the can mounted. Now before we do that, we can grab our aftermarket harness and go ahead and get this plugged on in. Now this bulky connector is ginormous, so what we're gonna have to do is really work it back into the dash away from the radio. Okay, so at this point we need to hook everything up. We have a subwoofer that we're installing, so we're going to get that connected here. Okay, so at this point of time, we're able to get the radio all the way back in. Now, we didn't show you step by step of how we slid the radio in, just because it took us about an hour to get the harness out of the way so the radio would fully seat in the can itself. We pulled out the HVAC controls down below as well as the vents up above just to give us a little bit more space. We suggest getting yourself maybe a shallow mount chassis radio, one that doesn't have a CD drive, just so it goes in a lot easier than ours did. But at this point of time, let's grab our dash panel here, put it up and around the radio, use the 2 screws that we originally pulled out from the factory radio, and then from that point of time, we want to make sure everything is working before we button up the dash itself, so steering wheel controls seem to be functioning correctly. Now let's go ahead and get our factory trim piece back in above the radio here. That just basically clips back into place. Once that's all the way in and snug, go ahead and install the passenger side trim panel as well. Okay, so at this point of time, everything seems to be working here. Again, we suggest a shallow mount chassis type radio, just so you don't have to go through the hassle we did. Be sure to hit that like button if you like what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time, and we will see you in the next video.